I learned that night that a lie can sound like betrayal, even when it is the only thing standing between a child and fear. The rain was beating against the tall windows of the Blackwood estate like it wanted to get inside and testify. Every drop slid down the glass in crooked silver lines, turning the city lights beyond the hill into blurry stars. I sat at the long mahogany table with my hands folded in my lap, trying to keep them still. I could feel the pulse in my wrists. Fast, guilty, alive. Across from me, Nathaniel Blackwood stood in the shadow of the fireplace, not moving, not blinking, not raising his voice. That was the terrifying thing about him. Men like Nate did not need to shout to make a room obey. The room already knew. His black suit looked untouched by the storm. His white shirt was open at the collar, but nothing about him felt casual. His gray eyes held mine with a kind of quiet that made every breath feel borrowed. Behind him, two of his men stood near the doors. They did not speak. No one did. The whole house seemed to be listening. Even the walls. Even the rain. On the table between us sat a thin folder, a key card, and a printed photograph from the security system. My name was on the access log. Emily Carter. 11:42 p.m. East Corridor. Private office. Restricted archive. I had never been inside that room. I had never touched his files. I had never betrayed him. But I knew who had. And I knew who had seen it. My eyes flicked once, only once, toward the narrow crack beneath the side door. A small shadow moved there. Bare feet. Pink pajama pants. Lily. 7 years old. Silent for almost a year. Nate's daughter was hiding just beyond the room. One tiny hand pressed over her mouth, like she was afraid even breathing would give her away. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. She had seen something she was never supposed to see, and someone had made sure she was too scared to say it. Nate noticed my glance. Of course he did. He noticed everything. His jaw tightened, just slightly. Look at me, Emily. I did. The sound of my own name in his voice felt colder than the rain. 3 months earlier, I had been just a speech therapist from Brooklyn with an overdue rent notice taped to my refrigerator and a mother whose medical bills arrived like clockwork. I had worn secondhand flats to this mansion and told myself rich people were just people with better lighting. Then I met Lily. Then I met him. And somehow, between her paper cranes and his silent doorways, this house had become a place I feared and cared about in equal measure. Nate stepped closer to the table. The firelight cut across his face, sharpening every line, every restrained emotion he refused to show. Did you betray me? He asked. For words. Soft. Controlled. Final. My throat closed. The truth rose inside me like a scream, but behind that door, Lily made the smallest sound. Not a word. Not even close. Just a broken little breath. And that was enough. I understood then that innocence is not always protected by telling the truth. Sometimes, in the wrong house, at the wrong moment, the truth can break the person you are trying to save. I looked back at Nate. At the man who ruled half the city and still could not see the fear hiding 10 feet away from him. I let him think the worst of me because the alternative was letting that child carry it alone. My fingers curled against my palms. My heart gave one hard, painful beat. Then I said the lie that changed everything. Yes. 3 months before that night, I was standing in my tiny Brooklyn kitchen, holding a medical bill in one hand and a rent notice in the other, trying to decide which kind of disaster could wait longer. The radiator hissed like it was angry at me. Rain tapped against the window over the sink. My mother was asleep in the next room, her breathing thin but steady, and I was doing math on the back of an envelope with numbers that refused to become mercy. I had $74 in my checking account, half a tank of gas, and a refrigerator that contained 2 eggs, a bruised apple, and a carton of milk that had started to smell suspicious. That was the night the call came. Unknown number. I almost ignored it because unknown numbers usually meant debt collectors using polite voices to say cruel things. But something made me answer. Miss Carter, a woman said, calm and professional. My name is Vivian Shaw. I am calling on behalf of the Blackwood family. We were given your name by Dr. Helen Morris at St. Anne's Pediatric Center. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Dr. Morris had been one of my supervisors during clinical training. She did not hand out my number casually. Is this about a child? I asked. Yes, the woman said. A 7-year-old girl. Selective mutism following a traumatic family event. Her father is requesting private sessions at his home. I looked at the rent notice again. Private sessions usually meant money. Real money. The kind that could keep the lights on and the pharmacy from saying my mother's prescription was not covered this month. Where is the home? I asked. There was a pause. Outside the city. About 40 minutes north, depending on traffic. And the family name? Another pause. Smaller. Heavier. Blackwood. I knew that name. Everyone in New York knew that name, even if they pretended they did not. It lived in business pages, courthouse whispers, restaurant corners, and the careful way grown men lowered their voices when it came up. Nathaniel Blackwood. Real estate, shipping, security firms, charities with gold plaques on hospital walls. A man people thanked in public and feared in private. I should have said no. A smart woman would have said no. A woman with options would have hung up, locked her door, and never thought about it again. But I was not a woman with options. I was a daughter with bills. I was a therapist with a child somewhere who had stopped speaking. And I knew what silence could do to a person when no one reached in gently enough. The next evening, I drove my old blue Toyota across the bridge and out of Brooklyn, windshield wipers fighting a soft gray rain. The city thinned behind me. Brick buildings became wide roads, then iron gates, then trees trimmed too perfectly to look natural. When I reached the Blackwood estate, the gate opened before I even touched the call button. A long driveway curved between dark lawns and white stone statues, leading to a house that looked less like a home and more like a courthouse for secrets. Two men in black coats waited by the front steps. They did not smile. One checked my identification. The other looked through my worn canvas bag like colored pencils and therapy cards might be dangerous. Then the front door opened, and warm light spilled over the stone. Vivian Shaw stood there in a cream sweater, silver hair pinned low, face kind but guarded. "Miss Carter," she said. "Thank you for coming." Inside, the house was silent in a way that felt trained. No television, no music, no messy signs of a child. Just polished floors, oil paintings, and men positioned near walls like shadows with pulse rates. Vivian led me upstairs to a pale blue room at the end of the hall. A little girl sat by the window with her knees pulled to her chest, her blonde hair falling across one cheek, her gray eyes fixed on the rain. "Lily," Vivian said softly. "This is Emily." The child did not move. I did not expect her to. I simply sat down on the carpet, 6 feet away, opened my bag, and placed a piece of white paper between us. Then I folded it slowly, corner to corner, crease by crease, until it became a small paper crane. Lily's eyes shifted, not to me, to the bird. And in that tiny movement, I heard the first sound this house had not been able to buy. Hope. I was reaching for a second sheet of paper when the room changed. Not with noise, not with footsteps, with stillness. The kind that arrives before a storm touches glass. Lily felt it before I did. Her small fingers stopped moving on the edge of the paper crane. Her gray eyes lifted past my shoulder, and every bit of softness I had seen in her face disappeared like someone had blown out a candle. I turned slowly. Nathaniel Blackwood stood in the doorway. He was taller than I expected, broad-shouldered in a charcoal suit that looked made for him and no one else. His dark blonde hair brushed back, his face clean-shaven and controlled in a way that made emotion feel like a locked room. His skin was pale under the hallway light, almost marble white against the black collar of his coat. But it was his eyes that held me still. Gray. Not warm gray like Lily's when she looked at the rain. Cold gray. Lake water in December. He did not enter right away. He watched the room first. The paper on the carpet. My bag by my knee. The distance between me and his daughter. The crane in Lily's hand. Nothing escaped him. Behind him, one of his men waited near the wall, silent as a shadow. Vivian stood farther back, hands folded, face unreadable. I rose carefully, not fast enough to startle Lily, not slow enough to look afraid. "Mr. Blackwood," I said. His eyes moved to mine. "Miss Carter." His voice was low, polished, American, but with the faint edge of old money and older danger. It did not need volume. It made the entire hallway listen. "You made her look at you." I glanced at Lily. She was staring at the crane again, thumb brushing one folded wing. "No," I said. "I made a bird." She chose to look. Something sharpened in his face. Not anger. Interest, maybe. Or suspicion wearing a better suit. "Most people who come here try to impress me first. I am not here for you." Vivian's breath caught softly behind him. The guard by the wall looked at me as though I had stepped too close to a cliff. Nathaniel did not move. For 3 long seconds, He only studied me. I heard the rain. I heard the old house settling. I heard my own heartbeat warning me that rent money was not worth speaking to men like him without caution. But I had spent years sitting across from children who had learned to survive by reading adults too closely. I knew what fear did when it became the language of a room. I would not bring more of it to Lily. Nathaniel stepped inside. One step, then another. The air seemed to make space for him. He stopped beside the low table, looked down at the paper crane, and then at his daughter. Lily. Her shoulders curled inward. Not because he was cruel. I could see that immediately. His voice softened around her name, almost painfully. But he carried the world like a weapon locked under glass. And children feel weight, even when adults try to hide it. She does not need to answer, I said. His gaze cut back to me. I know what my daughter needs. The words were quiet, precise, a warning dressed as a sentence. I should have stepped back, apologized, smiled the way people smile around powerful men when they want to leave safely and still get paid. Instead, I looked at Lily, then back at him. With respect, Mr. Blackwood, she needs everyone to stop needing something from her. The room went silent enough to hear the rain slide down the window. Nathaniel's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. A door cracking open, not enough to enter, only enough to show there was a room behind it. Dr. Morris said you were direct. Dr. Morris is polite. For the first time, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Not a smile. The idea of one. Then it vanished. My daughter has not spoken in 11 months. 15 specialists have sat on this carpet. Some lasted one session. Some lasted 1 week. They all left with theories, invoices, and nothing else. I do not promise miracles. Then what do you promise? I looked at Lily. Her hand was still on the crane, but her breathing had slowed. That mattered. More than his money. More than his stare. I promise I will not lie to her. I will not push her to perform. I will not treat her silence like disobedience. And I will not stay in this room if armed men are watching through the door. Vivian's eyes closed for half a second. The guard stiffened. Nathaniel looked at me as though deciding whether I was brave, foolish, or both. Then he turned his head slightly. Leave us. The guard hesitated. Only for a breath. Nathaniel did not repeat himself. The man stepped back into the hall. Vivian followed, pulling the door almost closed behind her. Almost. Nathaniel remained in the room. I lifted an eyebrow. He noticed. Of course he did. I am her father, he said. Then be her father from the hallway for 30 minutes. Something dangerous passed through his silence. Then something sadder followed it. He looked at Lily one more time, and all the power in him seemed to pause at the edge of helplessness. Do not make promises to my daughter you cannot keep, he said. I held his gaze. Do not make her afraid to hope. The words landed between us, small and irreversible. He left without another word, but the room did not feel empty. After he was gone, it felt marked, like his silence had stayed behind, watching me fold paper beside his daughter, waiting to see whether I would become another person who failed her. The first week passed in small victories no one else would have noticed. Lily did not speak. She did not smile. She did not run into my arms or suddenly become the kind of child adults love to call healed because it makes them feel less helpless. But on Tuesday, she moved 6 inches closer to me on the carpet. On Wednesday, she chose the green pencil before I placed it in front of her. On Thursday, she drew a house with only one window, then washed my face as if waiting for me to say the wrong thing. I did not. I drew a porch light beside it, soft yellow, nothing dramatic, just a little circle of warmth outside the door. Her eyes stayed on that light for a long time. The Blackwood estate had everything a child could want and almost nothing a child needed. There were rooms full of polished furniture no one touched, hallways wide enough to echo, staircases that curved like they belonged in a museum. But there were no crayon marks on the walls, no sneakers abandoned by the door, no cereal bowls in the sink. The house was perfect in the way a photograph is perfect after everyone in it has stopped breathing. So I brought disorder carefully. Paper scraps, soft music from my phone, stickers shaped like stars, a small stuffed rabbit with one floppy ear that I found at a pharmacy in Brooklyn for $9.99. Lily ignored it for 2 sessions, then placed it beside her knee during the third. Nathaniel noticed. He always noticed. Sometimes I felt him in the hallway before I saw him, that quiet gravity pulling the air tight. He would stand just outside the half-open door, one hand in his pocket, face unreadable, watching his daughter sit near me without flinching. He never interrupted after that first day. He never apologized either. Men like him seemed to consider silence both a weapon and a language. But one afternoon, when Lily shivered because the therapy room ran cold, the heat was fixed before my next visit. Another day, I mentioned that bright overhead lights could make anxious children withdraw. By the end of the week, the harsh bulbs had been replaced by warm lamps with cream shades. He never said he did it for us. He only changed the world around her and pretended it was nothing. The closest Lily came to speaking happened on a Friday night during a thunderstorm. I had stayed late because the roads were flooding near the parkway, and Vivian insisted I wait until the worst passed. The power flickered once, twice. Then the entire second floor went dark. Lily froze. Her pencil rolled off the table and tapped the hardwood floor, one tiny sound in a huge black house. I heard her breath catch, sharp and frightened. "Lily," I said softly. "I am right here." She did not move. Lightning flashed through the windows, turning her face white for half a second. I crossed the room slowly and sat on the carpet, close enough for her to reach me, far enough for her to choose. "Find my voice," I whispered. "Just my voice. Nothing else." Thunder rolled over the roof. She covered her ears. I began counting, low and steady. In for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 6. Her shoulders shook. I kept counting. Somewhere in the hall, footsteps stopped. I knew it was Nathaniel, but I did not look up. This moment was not his to command. It belonged to Lily. After a long minute, her small hand found my sleeve. Her fingers curled into the fabric like she was holding onto the edge of a dock in deep water. I placed my hand near hers, palm open, not touching unless she wanted me to. "You are safe," I said. "The dark is loud, but it is not in charge." Her mouth trembled. A sound came out, so small the storm nearly swallowed it. SSS. My heart stopped. I did not react too much. I knew better. Hope can scare a child back into silence if you grab it too quickly. "Take your time," I whispered. Her eyes filled, not with tears exactly, but with effort. With a child trying to push a mountain through one tiny word. "St." Another flash lit the room. In the doorway, Nathaniel stood completely still, his face stripped of every mask I had seen him wear. Not powerful, not cold, just a father afraid to breathe because his daughter almost had. Lily pressed her forehead against my sleeve, exhausted. The word never finished, but we both knew what it had been trying to become. Stay? After that storm, something in the Blackwood house began to change, not loudly, not all at once, but in the quiet way winter loosens when it has finally been touched by sun. The therapy room became warmer. Not just the temperature, though that changed too. Someone placed a soft cream rug over the cold hardwood. Someone moved the heavy furniture away from the windows so Lily could sit where the morning light reached the floor. Someone filled a glass jar with sharpened colored pencils, all arranged by shade, from pale yellow to midnight blue. I knew who had ordered it. I also knew he would never admit it. Nathaniel Blackwood did not offer kindness like ordinary people. He disguised it as maintenance, as efficiency, as an improvement to the property. But Lily noticed. Children always notice the things adults try to hide. The first time she saw the jar of pencils, she touched the yellow one, then looked toward the hallway where her father stood with his phone in his hand, pretending to read a message. Her eyes stayed on him for 2 full seconds. For Lily, that was almost an embrace. For Nate, it was enough to make his entire face still. He did not smile, but his hand closed slowly around the phone like he needed something to hold. I should have kept my distance from him. I told myself that every time I drove through those iron gates. Men like Nathaniel Blackwood were not safe places to rest your hope. They were storms with tailored coats and quiet voices. They built empires out of secrets. They made people straighten when they entered a room. And still, there were moments when I saw the man under the name. One evening, Lily fell asleep on the therapy room couch with the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. I gathered the paper cranes scattered across the carpet, careful not to wake her. When I turned, Nate was in the doorway. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled to his forearms, and for once he looked less like the city feared him and more like a father who had forgotten how to be tired until the house became quiet. "She sleeps after your sessions," he said. "That is good. She feels safe afterward," I answered. His eyes moved to Lily, and something in them softened so quickly I might have missed it if I had looked away. "I have given her everything." The words were low, not defensive, wounded. I folded another paper crane and placed it on the table. Everything is not the same as peace. He looked at me then. Really looked. The kind of look that made the room feel smaller, not because it was threatening, but because it was honest. You speak to me as if you are not afraid of me. I almost laughed, but the sound stayed in my throat. I am afraid of plenty of things, Mr. Blackwood. Losing my mother. Missing rent. Failing a child who needs me. You are not at the top of the list. For a moment, silence hung between us, fragile and strange. Then Lily shifted in her sleep, and both of us turned toward her at the same time. That was when I understood the danger was not only in his world. It was in the fact that we both loved the same child in different ways. He began inviting me to stay for dinner after late sessions. I refused twice. The third time, Vivian set a bowl of chicken soup in front of me before I could argue and said the roads were icy. Lily sat beside me at the long dining table, close enough that her sleeve brushed mine. Nate sat across from us, watching his daughter take 3 full bites without needing anyone to coax her. No one spoke much. Silverware touched porcelain. Rain ticked against the windows. The men in the hallway stayed out of sight. For 10 minutes, the mansion almost felt like a home. Then Miles Blackwood walked in, smiling like a man who had learned to make warmth nervous. He was Nate's cousin, polished and pale, with light brown hair and eyes that never landed anywhere by accident. Well, he said, looking from Lily to me. The therapist has become family dinner now. Lily's fingers tightened around her spoon. I felt it before I saw it. Nate looked up slowly. The room changed temperature. Careful, Miles, he said. Miles lifted both hands, still smiling. Just making conversation. But his eyes slid to Lily, and her face went blank in a way I had not seen in weeks. That night, as I drove back to Brooklyn through wet streets and yellow traffic lights, I could not shake the feeling that the softest room in that house had just been noticed by the wrong man. The week after Miles walked into that dining room, Lily stopped choosing yellow. It sounds small, I know. Almost ridiculous. But in therapy, small things are doors. The yellow pencil had been her porch light, her morning sun, the color she used when she wanted a picture to feel safe. On Monday, she pushed it away. On Tuesday, she would not touch the stuffed rabbit. On Wednesday, she sat with her back to the wall and watched the door as if something might come through it wearing a smile. I asked Vivian if anything had changed in the house. She looked toward the hallway before answering. Mr. Miles has been visiting more often. That was all she said, but her voice folded around the name like it had sharp edges. I should have told Nathaniel then. I should have trusted the discomfort in my own chest. But men like Nate lived surrounded by suspicion, and I was afraid of adding another shadow to a house already full of them. So I watched. I listened. I made the therapy room softer. I let Lily set the pace. On Thursday evening, she drew a hallway. Long, dark, with a red door at the end. She pressed so hard with the crayon that the paper tore. I kept my voice calm. Is that a door you know? Her little hand froze. Her eyes lifted to mine, then darted to the window. Outside, the sun had gone down early, leaving the lawn silver under a thin sheet of frost. You do not have to tell me, I said. You can just show me. She picked up the black pencil and drew a small rectangle beside the red door. A keypad. My stomach tightened. There was only one place in the house I had seen a keypad like that. Nate's private office, the one no one entered without permission. Before I could ask anything else, the door opened. Miles stood there with that polished smile, wearing a navy overcoat and leather gloves, as if he had been invited into every room in the world. There you are, he said, looking at Lily. Not me. Lily went still. Completely still. The pencil slipped from her hand without a sound. I rose slowly. She is in session. Miles glanced at me, amused. And I am family. Then you understand why she needs privacy. His smile thinned. For 1 second, the charm fell away, and I saw something underneath it that made my skin go cold. Not rage. Calculation. You are very protective for someone on payroll, Miss Carter. I stepped between him and Lily before I thought about it. His eyes noticed. They noticed everything. Just like Nate's, but without the grief that made Nate human. Miles looked over my shoulder at the drawing on the table. The red door. The keypad. The torn paper. Then his gaze shifted back to Lily, and his voice became soft enough to frighten me. Careful what you draw, sweetheart. Pictures can confuse people. Lily made a sound so small it barely lived. I turned toward her, and when I looked back, Miles was already walking away. That night, I stayed late. I told Vivian I was organizing materials, but really I was sitting with Lily until her breathing slowed. At 10:30 p.m., Nate was called away to the city. I saw him leave through the front windows, black car rolling down the driveway, red taillights swallowed by fog. The house seemed to exhale after him. 15 minutes later, Lily gripped my sleeve. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the hallway. I followed her stare. Downstairs, near the east corridor, a small green light blinked beside a locked door. Then came the quiet beep of a key card. I moved closer to the banister, careful, silent. Miles stood outside Nate's private office, holding a card in his gloved hand. My card, the one issued to me for therapy room access. He looked up just once, and for a breath, his eyes met mine across the dark. Then he smiled. Not because he was caught, because he knew exactly who would be blamed. I knew in that second that running would only make me look guilty, and shouting would only pull Lily deeper into a room she was already too afraid to survive. Miles stood below me in the dim east corridor, my key card still between his gloved fingers, the private office door blinking green behind him. He did not hurry. He did not panic. He simply slipped the card into his coat pocket and lifted one finger to his lips, as if we were sharing a secret instead of standing inside one. Behind me, Lily's hand tightened around my sleeve. Her nails pressed through the fabric, tiny half-moons of fear. I turned to her first. Always to her first. Go to your room, I whispered. Lock the door. Put the chair in front of it like we practiced for Thunder Nights. Her eyes filled with questions she could not ask. I touched the paper crane in her palm and made my voice as steady as I could. You are safe if you stay quiet right now. I hated myself for saying it. I had spent weeks teaching her that silence did not have to be a prison, and now I was asking her to hide inside it again. But Miles was watching from below, and I understood something cold and certain. He had not only stolen my card, he had chosen his witness, a child no one could force to speak. By the time Nathaniel returned, the house was awake in that silent Blackwood way, lights on, men moving fast without raising their voices, Vivian pale by the staircase. I stood near the therapy room with my bag at my feet and my hands empty. I had already searched my coat. The key card was gone. The camera system would show my access number. The office would show whatever Miles wanted it to show. And Lily was somewhere upstairs behind a locked door, breathing through terror because I had told her to. Nathaniel came in from the rain just after midnight. His coat was wet at the shoulders, his hair darker from the storm, his face unreadable until one of his men handed him the folder. I watched his eyes move across the pages. Access log. Timestamp. Missing archive file. My name. My number. The first crack in his expression was not anger. It was disappointment. That hurt worse than fear. Where is she? He asked. No one needed to ask who he meant. Vivian looked at me. I stepped forward before anyone else could answer. I am here. Nate's gaze lifted slowly. It pinned me in place. Not because he wanted to scare me. Because I had let him see hope in his daughter, and now. The evidence said I had used that trust to walk through a locked door. He led me to the study without touching me. That was almost crueler. The room smelled of smoke, rain, and old wood. A fire burned low in the hearth. The folder waited on the table like a sentence already passed. Miles stood near the shelves, quiet, clean, sympathetic in a way that made my stomach turn. Miss Carter may have been pressured by someone outside the house, he said. We should allow for that possibility. I looked at him. He looked back with gentle concern painted over poison. Nathaniel ignored him. His attention was mine now, and I felt the full weight of what it meant to be believed by no one powerful. Did you use your card to enter my office? He asked. I thought of Lily behind the door. I thought of the way she had looked at the red door in her drawing. I thought of Miles saying pictures could confuse people. Yes, I said. The word scraped my throat. Nate went very still. Did you remove the file? My eyes burned. I kept them on his, because if I looked toward the hall, he would follow it. Yes. Somewhere beyond the study door, a small breath broke. Lily. Nate heard it too. His eyes shifted just barely. I stepped into his line of sight before he could turn. She has nothing to do with this. His face hardened, and I watched him put the father away because the boss had been wounded. Do not use my daughter as cover. The words landed clean and deep. I could have survived anger. I could have survived suspicion. But that sentence almost brought me to my knees. I had spent weeks trying to teach Lily that truth could be safe. Now I stood in front of the only man who could protect her and made myself the lie. I am not, I whispered. Nathaniel's voice dropped colder than I had ever heard it. I trusted you near my child. The fire cracked softly behind him. Miles lowered his eyes like he was mourning something. And I understood that some betrayals do not happen when people lie. Some happen when the person you saved decides your silence means guilt. They did not throw me out. That would have been easier to survive. Nathaniel Blackwood simply opened the front door himself and stood beside it while the storm waited outside like it had been invited. No shouting, no threats, no hand on my arm. Just that terrible quiet, colder than anything the rain could do. Vivian stood at the bottom of the stairs with one hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes shining in a way she tried to hide. Miles remained in the study, probably smiling now that no one could see him. I picked up my canvas bag from the floor. It felt too light without the colored pencils, the paper cranes, the small pieces of hope I had left upstairs with Lily. You will be paid through tonight, Nate said. Formal, distant, a stranger speaking to a contractor. I looked at him, searching for the man who had fixed the lights because his daughter shivered, the man who watched her sleep like the world might take her if he blinked. I could not find him. Keep it, I said. His jaw tightened. This is not charity. No, I whispered. It is worse. For a second, something moved behind his eyes. Regret, maybe. Doubt, maybe. But Miles had built the lie well, and I had handed Nate the final nail with my own mouth. So I stepped past him into the rain. The cold hit my face, my neck, my hands. I walked down the stone steps without looking back, because if I saw Lily at the window, I knew I would break. My Toyota was parked under the security light, old and blue and ordinary in a driveway full of black cars. I drove away with both hands on the wheel, following the curve of the estate road through the dark trees until the iron gates closed behind me. Only then did I cry. Not loudly, not beautifully, just enough that the streetlights blurred and I had to pull over 2 miles down the road to breathe. Back at the house, Lily stopped coming downstairs. I learned that later from Vivian, weeks later, in a voice message she was not supposed to leave. That first night, Lily did not sleep. The second day, she refused breakfast. The third, she pushed away every pencil except black and gray. Nathaniel called for another specialist from Manhattan. Lily turned her face to the wall. He bought new toys, new books, a therapy tablet with expensive programs, anything a desperate father could purchase when the one thing his child needed had just been sent away. Nothing worked. The house returned to silence, but not the old silence. This one had a wound in it. On the 4th night, Nate found her in the therapy room. No guards. No Vivian. No Miles. Just Lily sitting on the cream rug beneath the warm lamp, surrounded by paper. She had drawn the red door again. The keypad. The east corridor. Miles standing there in his navy coat. Me on the stairs. Herself behind me, small and shaking. And at the bottom of the page, in crooked letters that cut through every lie in that house, she had written 4 words. She lied for me. Nate told Vivian later that he could not move at first. He just stared at the paper while the room, the mansion, the entire empire he believed he controlled shifted under his feet. Lily watched him with hollow gray eyes, waiting to see if the truth would be punished too. He knelt in front of her slowly, as if approaching a frightened bird. Lily, he said, and his voice broke on her name. She pointed at the drawing of Miles, then at the drawing of me. Then she touched the paper crane beside her knee, the first one I had ever folded. Her mouth trembled. Nate held completely still. This time, he did not command. He did not question. He waited. Lily took one shaking breath, then another. And for the first time in almost a year, his daughter spoke clearly enough to destroy him. Emily saved me. By the time Nathaniel Blackwood learned the truth, I had already returned to the kind of life that did not leave room for heartbreak. Rent was still due. My mother still needed her medicine. Children still came into the community clinic with tired eyes and words trapped behind fear. I told myself that was enough. Work, bills, groceries, breathing, ordinary things, safe things. But every time I folded a piece of white paper, my hands remembered Lily. Every time rain tapped against the clinic windows, I heard Nate's voice in that study, cold and wounded, telling me he had trusted me near his child. A week passed, then another. I did not call Vivian back after her message. I listened to it once at 2 o'clock in the morning, sitting on the edge of my bed while Brooklyn hummed outside my window. And when I heard Lily's name, I pressed the phone to my chest like sound could become touch. Vivian said Nate knew. She said Lily had spoken. She said Miles was gone from the house, removed from every company account, every family trust, every locked door he had used to hide behind. She said Nate had found the missing file in a place only Miles could access, along with records that proved how carefully he had built the lie around me. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. Truth had arrived too late to protect the part of me that believed him. On the third Friday after I left, the clinic was closing late. I had stayed with a little boy named Aaron who was learning to say home without swallowing the last sound. Outside, the sidewalk shone with fresh rain. The air smelled like wet pavement and coffee from the deli next door. I was locking the front door when I saw him across the street. No convoy, no men in black coats, no polished performance of power. Just Nathaniel standing under the yellow streetlight, wearing a dark overcoat with rain on his shoulders and a white paper crane in his hand. For a moment, neither of us moved. Traffic passed between us. A cab hissed through a puddle. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. He looked smaller without the mansion around him. Not weak. Never that. But human in a way I had not seen before. He crossed when the light changed, stopping 3 feet away from me like he finally understood distance as respect. Emily, he said. My name did not sound cold this time. It sounded careful, almost broken. I tightened my grip on my keys. Is Lily all right? His face changed at the question, grief and gratitude moving through his eyes at the same time. She asked for you this morning. The words hit me so hard I had to look away. Rain slid from the clinic awning in silver strings. That is good, I whispered. That is more than good. She told me what happened. He looked down at the paper crane, turning it once between his fingers. She told me enough. The cameras told me the rest. I nodded because I did not trust my voice. I should have seen it, he said. I should have seen him. I should have seen you. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Yes, you should have. He absorbed it without flinching. No defense. No excuse. Just the truth landing where it belonged. I came to ask for forgiveness I do not deserve. The clinic sign buzzed softly above us. Behind the glass, the little therapy room was still warm, scattered with crayons and picture cards, small ordinary tools for rebuilding what fear had taken. I thought of Lily sitting in that huge house, finally brave enough to speak. I thought of the man in front of me, powerful enough to ruin lives, standing in the rain because he had ruined the wrong kind of trust. Forgiveness is not something you collect, I said. It is something you earn slowly. He nodded once. Then I will start there. He placed the paper crane on the windowsill between us, not in my hand, not forcing me to take it, just leaving it close enough for me to choose. And for the first time since I had walked out of his house, I understood that power could open doors, but only humility could stand outside one and wait.